No, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. I just wanted to get you on, and I'll introduce you real quick. Coach Gary Bernardi, known each other for my whole life, pretty much. Long time on the field.
Literally, you're just about
Yeah,
literally your whole life.
yes. Um, Coached at SC, have coached at UCLA, Arizona, Colorado, UNLV, Nevada, San Diego State. 40 plus years in coaching. I appreciate you taking the time, and it's good to see you. And I wanted to continue to talk about. I mean, your experience, I think, is so vast. And I don't know if you know, but I'm writing a book. Well, I'm done with writing the book,
Right.
and it's called More Than the Scoreboard, same as this. Coach Mac Brown's doing the foreword, so I'm just waiting on that. But
Nice. Good.
about 175 pages, and what I did is I took my experience, but I took a lot of my dad's old notes that my mom gave me. And you know that coaching manual that he would give out to his assistant coaches every year?
I still have that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's the last chapter in the book.
Yeah.
So, but I just kind of wanted it's called More Than the Scoreboard, a coach's guide to strong cultures, true leadership, and unbreakable teams. And so I kind of just want to go down that avenue with you. And I appreciate you coming on.
You know, I don't know if you ever saw it. This is funny. It is. I think I was at UNLV when your dad passed away, and so the thing that he would hand out the very first day of fall camp from Dwight Perry, 18 steps to a successful season leading through the training camp. So one time after he passed away, I printed it up stationary from UNLV and put some comments on there and some feelings on there and the date of this and that. And I sent it, had it laminated, sent it to every school in Arizona because I used to recruit there, obviously, right. And in Nevada. And Tim Salem called me one time, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, and showed it to me.
Did he?
He found it on a wall in Florida at a high school.
That's unbelievable.
How about that? Was unbelievable. And go ahead.
I know you sent it to me a while back, but if you get a chance, resend it because I'll throw it in the book. Just the picture of it. That's crazy.
Yeah. Tim called me and said, I thought Florida. You'd be interested in this.
That's pretty cool.
It's unbelievable. That was unbelievable.
That's just a hand-me-down from Dwight Perry, who most people listening probably don't even know who Dwight Perry is. So look it up. But
I met a guy yesterday over at Green Valley Ranch where I hang around once in a while, and he didn't know who Jack Harbaugh was. And he was, 60 years old. Yeah. He knew about Jim, and he knew about, the one at the Ravens, John, right? But he heard of, but he wasn't quite sure who he was.
Jack. It's a history of football, man. Those guys.
No question, right?
What? So, Coach, I kind of want to start off just from a culture aspect. I mean, you've coached with some great head coaches. You've coached for some great head coaches. What are a couple things that, from a culture standpoint, that all those head coaches share in common in regards to developing their culture and maintaining it?
I think in their mind they have a plan and they formulate a way to carry it out, and they have a philosophy that they believe in and a culture that they want to instill to their team. And your dad had a way of doing things. And then it was kind of interesting because I had worked with him for 13 years. And then I went to work for Terry Donahue. and Terry Donahue had a lot of success too.
Right.
And they were both, I mean, that's just a starting point, but they both had a way of doing it, and they believed in it, and they preached it, and they demanded it from the coaches. And the coaches have to spread the word for you, I believe. But it's got to be something every day. It can't be changing every month. It's
Yeah.
something that you win, lose, draw, summer, fall. It's always the same message. And Mike McIntyre, when I worked with him at San Jose and at Colorado for 6 years, he had a philosophy, he had a belief in what he was going to do. I worked for Rocky Long and Brady Hoke, similar philosophies, but there was no question what the philosophy of the program was going to be, period. And I think that's the big thing.
Do you think that with today's day and age of college sports and specifically football, with the NIL stuff and all the transfers and stuff like that, and I know you were close to Barry Odom when he was at UNLV,
Yeah.
and got to watch
Yeah,
him.
that's another guy.
Yeah.
He knew what he wanted, and those players found out. And it wasn't about yelling and screaming and throwing things. It was, you repeat the same thing. I want everybody in the same shoes. What don't you understand?
Yeah.
You know, and you follow through on it.
Do you think that's harder? I mean, I know you're still close to a lot of coaches. Do you think it's more difficult to maintain that type of a culture where, I mean, you can be repetitive and constantly hitting on the same aspects of your culture, but with all the turnover, do you think it's harder for coaches to keep up with it, quite honestly?
I think probably, you know what? I go over and watch. I haven't been over there because of Bree's deal
Right.
as much. But when I'd go over there, and I went twice a week to Coach Odom's practices at UNLV, and you could see it the first couple times you were there, and that was during the NIL or during the same kind of period, and I think that it for the most part you can stick to your guns more or
Yeah.
less, but your staff has to be all in, and you still have to do some kind of investigation of the recruits that you're bringing into your program.
Yeah.
You can't just take anybody. Some guys aren't going to fit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just talking to guys, it seems like, back when you were coaching, when I was coaching at that level, when Joe started out, I think that a lot of times what would happen most of the time in strong cultures is that those older guys that had gone through it from freshman to sophomore to junior and seniors, those older guys would really implement and live the culture. And it showed the younger guys, what they needed to do. And if they were doing something they shouldn't have been doing, it's like, hey, we don't do that here.
Right.
And because nowadays with all the transfers, you're getting a lot of the guys that are sophomores, juniors, may not be there anymore that when they were as freshmen. Yeah. So you really got to be careful of who you bring in from a culture, because it's not interesting to me. And it's not, you look at like Clemson, right? And I know everybody has down years, and but up until this year, Coach Sweeney didn't take any transfers. And now he's taking
that's
transfers.
why I root like hell for Clemson.
So do I.
So do I.
But, they just started taking transfers this year, and I don't know how many they took. But, I've had a lot of coaches say it's more of an instant culture. Like you're constantly, which is probably a good thing for a lot of coaches. And like you said, assistants have to be nailing the culture home every single day with as many new guys as they have coming in. But I think for high school coaches, it may be a little bit easier because they're used to the turnover. There's so much turnover. What with all the high schools that you've been in, um, again, what do you think? What advice would you give to high school coaches when it comes to their culture? Um, if they're struggling with that turnover and those kids are a lot younger, whether it be, because I'm telling you, coach, from a high school level, when COVID hit, it changed things. It
Yeah,
changed kids. It
yeah, you're
changed
right.
things.
And the gentleman that I worked for, I talked about it now at San Diego State. Brady was the head coach, and so we had to adjust. But your dad and Terry Donahue and Rocky Long and Mike McIntyre, Jerome Sowers. Uh, they never had to experience the COVID deal as a head coach, or where I was with them at that time, But the other thing is, I think that probably, you like to have a hard, fast rule. This is how it is. God dang it, we're going to do it this way, and that's good. But I do think there's probably a little bit more of or it's needed a little bit more of the nurturing that Dick Tomey had. And he was really good about nurturing the players and talking to them individually more often than the general uh, philosophy that we were accustomed to in growing up and coaching. And Dick was really good about that. And I think probably in today's era that would be something that would be beneficial
Yeah,
or
yeah,
could
and
be beneficial.
I think we talk about it all the time with coaches on here. Is that you really have to now more so than ever. You have to have that personal relationship with, and we always did, but that relationship where if you notice someone's off, bring them in, sit down and talk to them.
Yeah,
They have to be able to trust you. And I'll tell you who else is really good and spent a lot of time talking about that was Mac Brown. Um,
yeah, I bet. Yeah,
like that was like his mentality the whole time is they have to know that you love them, and you have to, some kids are this way and some kids are that way, and you have to get a feel for each kid individually in order to know how to approach them. But
yeah,
again, I don't know if you ever met Steve Grady, my high school coach.
yeah,
um I mean, he was a mean cuss, man,
yeah. He
and
was a hard ass.
I
Yeah,
love him. I mean, that
yeah.
guy would, I've said it before, but
I
he would
remember when
smoke.
he was playing in college.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was OJ's backup. He would smoke two
yeah,
packs of cigarette a day, but he'd run 4 miles a day.
yeah.
Um, but
Well,
those
that's
days,
kind of like Mo did was a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
He didn't smoke like that, but yeah, it's kind of like Mo.
yeah. Um, I know you're huge on development, and I know that because when I got hired as tight ends coach, I didn't really know a whole lot, if anything, about tight ends. But the first thing I did was jump on a plane and to come out to visit you to learn as much as I can in a couple days when you were at UCLA.
Mhm.
Uh, and I've learned more from you than you know a lot of coaches. Um, so I appreciate that. But what do you think from a leadership development process? Um, First step, you have to identify leaders. So when you were coaching your position players, was it easy for you to identify leaders right away, or was that kind of a process?
Well, no, I think I think the recruiting was a little bit different, and to me, that was always one of the things that you had to identify when you were recruiting. He didn't have to be the leader like Ricky Hunley was for your dad at Arizona, but you could see you could see that the players at practice respect what's going on and he's a leader out there. They all you can tell when you're watching practice at a high school, and when you have 18 and when you have 6 tight ends in your meeting room, it's a little bit easier. But when you have 18 offensive linemen, it's a little bit harder. But I think that's just a characteristic that you're looking for in recruiting.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts.
Right.
And then you'd like to think that in the 4 or 5 years that I'm talking pre-NIL, that you can develop that. And it is harder at Western Kentucky, where Joe works with Tyson Helton. Tyson has a nice way of being able to replace and get new kids into the program, but have a relationship with the team, and they know who's in charge, and they know what's expected.
Yeah. So how do you take a guy like Tony Baselli? Okay, here's my example. Guy like Tony Baselli comes into SC. He's now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, right? He's in Canton. But how do you take a guy like that was wild and crazy when he first got there and develop a Tony Baselli into the type of player and leader he was by the time he left SC, to the point that, when he was with Jacksonville and then ending his career and getting into the Hall of Fame. Because when Tony first came in, Tony wasn't, he was, like I said, he was wild and almost out of control. He was a hell of a player from the get, but he wasn't really a leader. He didn't know how to lead. And I know lineman leaders are different. They're no BS and to the point. But at the same time, guys around you have to respect you. And he got to that point. So how do you develop someone like a Tony Baselli?
Well, this is interesting. Is the blessing to be with Tony Baselli, okay? But then when I left SC, I had a chance to work with Jonathan Ogden.
Oh, wow.
And you talk about Jonathan Ogden and Tony Baselli. At the end of the day, football and playing and winning was really important.
Yeah.
Really important. And they both, in their own way, displayed that at practice. Nobody at SC would say Tony was a dog at practice.
Mm-mm.
Tony worked at practice because he wanted to be effing good.
Yeah.
Jonathan Ogden, he didn't say 2 words sometimes, but he was good and he wanted to be great. And he was in both, and you never had to worry about them academically. Jonathan was a great student, and Tony was a decent, good student.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, and so they're just different personalities. Yeah. But when it gets down to it, football and winning is important.
Yeah.
100%. And that, I think, ends up being what's ahead of the class.
Yeah. No, that's good.
And in their square, in their world, they wanted to be great.
Yes.
That down deep, they wanted to be great. And they were.
They were.
Yeah. Tony's career got cut a little bit short because of some injuries.
Right.
But, Jonathan now, and Jonathan never practiced in spring because he was throwing the shot put.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he never practiced spring practice.
That may have been better for him from a physical stability standpoint and health standpoint.
That's crazy. I always tell people I was fortunate that I was there when those two players were there. And Bob Palcic was there, and like it was kind of a different way of going about things. And John Matsko was at
Right.
SC, and their title was the line coach, obviously. But in those days, because of formations and offenses, you had a tackle tight end type coach too,
Yeah.
and it really helped me develop a lot working with those guys and other guys. But you just had to work. You end up working with a lot of players, and then if you get involved in special teams, that was good too.
Yeah.
Way of being around a lot of the players. But I think that if you need to winning and competing, and if it's not in your heart to be good, it's hard to change that.
It's hard to change it. Yeah. Another thing that comes up with a lot of high school coaches that we talk about are coaching led teams compared to player led teams. And I think we all agree. I mean, the more success you have, the more of a player led team it's going to be. But at the same time, if a coach doesn't have the leadership capabilities and isn't, instilling the culture consistently, then, even a player led team can falter and have some bad seasons. So, talking to younger coaches, high school coaches out there, what are some tips, some suggestions in regards to really developing your program and your culture into making sure that the players have that leadership where if a player speaks up, because at the high school level, some teams have it, some teams don't. A lot of coaches, if they don't have it, a lot of coaches don't know how to get it to where these players need to hold each other accountable, and it needs to be a player-led team. What would you suggest to those younger high school coaches that are struggling with that?
Well, I really believe this is that you have to treat the players the way you treat your own children.
Yeah.
But you're not their buddies.
No.
You're there for them, and you try to teach them the right way of going about things. And you have a wonderful relationship and even a friendship, but you coach them hard and you're demanding on them. You have to be demanding and having them do things right in the classroom. And people don't talk about in the classroom as much as they used to. And I think that with the NIL, I'm kind of interested to see what happens in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years of how many kids actually graduate from college.
Yeah.
But in years past, in your own children, you want them to graduate and be successful and have good morals and good values. And those all have to work together.
Yeah. Do you think, because I keep saying back, I mean, back is
Right.
4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
But back before the NIL and the transfer, I mean, it was, and we've seen it coming. But I mean, I remember when my dad was at U of A, was at SC's, kind of a little bit different, but even Missouri for the first few years. I mean, it was, you needed to graduate. Graduation rates were a big key on if a coach
Right.
stuck around. Your team acted off the field. Were they good people? Did they stay out of trouble? Do you think that's been lost because everything's turned into a business?
I think some of it's been lost, but at the end of the day, there was only 258 players drafted in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And there's 10,000 playing college football, and not everybody's getting 6 figures. Some guys are just getting $500 a month more. Well, that runs out. And, I think that I think as somebody that plays college football, somebody that gets a degree, they've made themselves marketable
Yeah.
in life.
Yeah.
And it you go to college for 5 years and you establish your buddies that you went to school with and you have great memories with, and you fought together and you went out together. And I still think there's a meaningful for a lot of players that
Sure.
still has a chance. They don't realize it because of the what's constantly being talked about. But you know what? They're getting coached. They're probably having a chance to be coached better than what we were able to do. Because you look on the sidelines or you go watch somebody practice, and there's 18 coaches out there.
Yeah. At
Yeah, I mean,
least.
God dang.
But
That's
do you think from an athletic director and administration standpoint, do you think a lot of ads have lost sight of the fact that, as coaches, we're there to develop them as men, to become instrumental in society, to graduate, to become good husbands, good fathers, good businessmen, good leaders in the community? Or do you
well. I
think it's
think
just
that's
all about
still. I
money?
think that goes on. The problem is that you don't have very many people that start with you as a freshman and finish with you.
Right.
And when you'd like to feel like you can be a intricate part of their life when that happens, but you can still preach the right things, but your message might get lost when it's only 18 months, 12 months. It could be 6 months where they're with you. But I do think, and I as I indicated, the next 5 years or so might um, show us. But I get the feeling what I see and hear and watch that a lot of kids aren't in position to graduate if they change schools 2 or 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they, they're jumping on that quick money. They might think $50,000 is, but that's not going to last forever.
Nope.
That goes fast, and they probably spend it fast. I don't know.
Um,
I still
young.
think there's tremendous value in a college education, a college experience in playing football.
Yeah, and so do I. And I think most coaches, if not all coaches, would agree with that. And like you said, to the point, I mean, if kids are transferring, they're losing credits here and there, makes it a little bit more difficult, a lot more difficult to graduate in 4 years or even 5 years. I have this belief, right or wrong, that I think athletic directors, there's fewer and fewer athletic directors that were coaches,
Oh,
and
there's no question.
more and
There's
more
no
that are
question.
yeah, more and more that are businessmen, and so they don't see a college coach's responsibility, and it's trickling down to the high school.
Right.
A coach's responsibility as creating real men, good men, people that graduate, and so I wanted your take on that. But yeah, I think all coaches have the same mindset. Um,
Well, I still think that's true in high school because there are a lot of good men that coach football at the high school, which is like there's a lot of good instructors.
right.
But I think that just like the society we live with, the respect for authority, the respect for police, the respect for teachers and educators is not the same. And I think that's what we should be worried about in the long run too.
Do you think that just comes from society in general, in the
Yeah,
way?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's
It,
it's
it
not pointed.
no.
It comes from society, but I mean, people just don't have respect for one another.
No.
And I think that football, as is curricular activities at the high school and curricular activities at the college, can develop good social skills and good people.
People
And
skill.
I think athletics, because of the discipline you need to compete with, is a leader in the forefront there.
Yeah. I just think, and talking to my mom about this, because we talk about it, I mean, we fall on different sides of a lot of issues.
Sure.
But there's and this word isn't used a whole lot with coaches, but as a society as a whole, in every aspect of society, that there's really no kindness anymore, and no one
Yeah.
gives anybody any other grace. It's like you
Respect.
can, yeah, and it's. I hope it ges corrected. So I
Yeah.
hope the
I
younger
do. I
generation's
mean,
corrected.
how many kids do you cross path with, whether they're in a high school situation or a college situation, and when they talk to a coach or a teacher or the principal, and they will say yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I crossed paths today with a gentleman that was probably my age, and he was going through a door and he was having a hard time walking. And he said, and so I opened the door and I said, go ahead of me. And he says, oh, thank you. And I said, yes, sir, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me like, but he was, he was appreciative
Yeah.
though. But he was
Yeah.
appreciative,
Yes.
you know?
And you know what? It's funny because U of A played Colorado up here a couple of weeks ago,
Right,
and Mason,
right,
my nephew, is backup quarterback at U of A, and
right.
he we stuck around afterwards to see him, and he must have given me like 10 hugs, but every time I spoke to him, and I always talked to him, and his dad passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately, and
Right,
but
right.
so I always kind of whisper things, and I'll text him, and he always responds to me. And he's like this with everybody. He looks you straight in the eye and he says, yes, sir. I understand. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
And thank you. And
yeah.
and it's not, I mean, it goes a long ways. It goes a
Goes
long
a
way.
long way. But
And all right, last thing I got for you, coach, because a lot of high school coaches listen to this, but there's a lot of, speaking to younger coaches, regardless of what level. I mean, you got these younger coaches that are hungry to just continue to move up the chain. Whether you're a freshman coach in high school level, and want to get to be a college head coach or a pro coach or whatever, in that whole chain, right, of command. What do you think some of the most important things are young coaches really need to focus on in this day and age to help them attain their goal as coaches, whatever that may be?
well, I think that you have to realize that it's an occupation that you choose, and it's a profession. I think, Corb, that you treat it as a profession, and I really learned that from good people like your dad and Willie Pete, and all the way to Rocky Long and Mike McIntyre. And when I was thinking about retiring, I was contemplating. I went through and I found about 165 gentlemen that I worked with over the last 40, 45 years.
Wow.
And 165, and I can't say, maybe there was one or two that didn't represent the profession properly. So my point is, I learned from a lot of good people. And it
Right.
started with my high school coach. My high school coach, who's 90 years old, and I still stay in touch with him. Obviously, he's not in the best of health, but he left a lasting impression. And whatever it is, 50, 60 years later, I still have a friendship with him.
Right.
And he was so professional, even just in the high school. And I think that sometimes, whether you're a high school coach or you want to be a high school coach, that it's hard sometimes for guys to be good listeners. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people want to impress you and want to talk. Sometimes it's good to be a good listener. And I think that is so important. And wherever you're coaching, whatever level you're coaching, if you think about making that your Super Bowl and doing the best job you could do there, is where it starts.
Yeah.
And I think that is really something, a couple other things that I thought, Corb, is, and I did this the one year I was a high school coach at Burroughs High School, and is I had a parent meeting and talked to the parents. And I understand sometimes that's a little bit more difficult. I don't know if it is or it isn't, but I think for the coach and the assistant coaches, if you know the parents and you can contact the parents, it's like recruiting.
Right.
When you get to know the parents, and if you go make those home visits, like we used to all make a lot of home visits, and you got to know the mom and the dad or the parent that's in the home, and then you have a problem with their son, all you got to do is call the parent.
Right.
And they're on your side, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is really important.
Yeah.
And
it's funny you say that, because in my book, in that last chapter with, coaching beliefs and organization that, came really from my dad, and I've kind of restructured it. I talk about that. And that's one thing I learned from Jim Jones, was that, you exactly what you just said, you have the parent meeting, and then you schedule times to go in and talk to the parents with a kid. And even if it's, 10, 15 minutes in their home, and
absolutely,
it changes things, because you build a relationship, and then it's a lot easier to help guide that young person in the direction that you want them to go. And you talk, go ahead.
Oh, but no, I was going to say is sometimes by going into the home or meeting the parents and talking to them, you don't have to say anything. You can just be a good listener, and you can just tell why we have a problem here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
and you talk about listening too, and I think I've told this story maybe once on here, but I'll tell you because you'll get a kick out of it. But when I was a GA at Missouri, I was on the defensive side of the ball with John Hoke. You talk about Brady Hoke. I was in the secondary with John, and Mo Ankney was the defensive coordinator. And I remember one of the first meetings we had at defensive staff meetings, and people were kind of going around, and I mean, here I am, 22 years old, and I said something, and I've known Mo my whole entire life at that point.
right.
I mean, he may as well be my dad. And he looked at me, and I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but basically it was, shut up, sit there, listen, take notes, and if we want something from you, we will ask you.
That's
And,
about it. That's exactly right. And
I mean,
Mo could put that pretty bluntly.
yeah. And I was like, I mean, of course I'm young, and so it hurt my feelings, but it impacted me a great deal. And as a young coach, like we say with everything, you don't know what you don't know. And like you said, it was at the time, it was important for me, being so young, to make sure that those guys in the room knew that I had a voice, but it wasn't the time to have a voice.
Yeah.
I hadn't earned that yet.
That's
And
right.
what from a learning standpoint with young coaches, are you a big proponent of conventions and clinics and stuff like that?
I am a big proponent of being around and meeting other coaches, meeting and talking and then listening and expressing yourself naturally too, because there's a lot of young coaches that know a lot of football. That's, but I think the more people you can meet and the more people you could come across, I think is really important. And young coaches, especially, it is frustrating now. I don't think that as many assistants in college, the way the calendar is, I don't know that they go and go recruiting like we did.
Right.
And I thought that was, to always be meeting people. Here's a story. Okay, is I'm in Arizona and I'm spring recruiting. Okay, and this young coach from Southern Illinois is recruiting in Arizona. And I noticed he's pretty sharp, Where I show up, he shows up, and he's a good listener, and he's taking notes, and he'd ask me once in a while, where do you think I should go next? And I'd say, you don't need to go there, but you probably should go there just to meet the coach because he has a real good program, just back and forth. Okay, and two people that were in that category. One was from Southern Illinois, and his name is Kalen DeBoer. Okay, and the other one was from Boise State, and his name was Brian Harson. And they didn't tell me everything they knew, but both guys I left with a big impression, the way they handled their business and how professional they were in representing whatever school they were with as their careers went on.
Yeah.
I had one other quick story. Is the first time, as you know, I was actually hired in 1980 by Tony Mason at the University of Arizona. And within 3 or 4 weeks, Coach Mason was dismissed for some things that came about. And the high school coach I worked for at Fountain Valley High School, Mike Milner, called me immediately and said, "Hey, I can get you your job back. I want you to come back here and come back to Fountain Valley." And I said, "No." I said, "Mike, I'm going to see this out here." Okay, so I had to make a decision, and this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to coach in college football, and so I stayed. I rolled the dice and I stayed. I met with your dad a couple times, and it turned out I had the opportunity to stay and work for your dad and Mo and that staff that we had. Anyways, the first meeting with the temporary staff we had on a Sunday night, because we had to get spring practice finished, within the 30 days that it had already started. And we were in there. There was about 6 or 7 of us, maybe Mike Berry, Keith Rowan, myself, George Pasco, and Ron Turner. And so your dad stood up and he said, "I'll always remember this." He said, "We need to get going with this spring practice. And let me tell you something right now." He says, "If you're loyal, if you work really hard, and you always put this program ahead of yourself, you and I will never have a problem."
Yeah.
I always remember that.
Yep.
If you're loyal.
And that is something that has fallen by the wayside. The loyalty, people don't see it the same. People, even in the coaching profession, people are out for themselves. And I just always remember my dad saying the same thing, like, everything that he did, was about the players first. Like, how is it going to impact the players?
Yeah.
Then the program, and it went down the line, and he was always, as the head coach, it was always him last.
Mm-hmm.
It was like everything else, how does it affect everybody else, and then him.
Right.
And you talk about those young guys, DeBoer and the guy up at Boise, when they were young coaches. And it's funny because I remember the first time I went on the road recruiting, and I had Oklahoma, and the first school I went to was Carl Albert High School in Oklahoma City. And Phil Bennett, remember Phil?
Sure do, yeah.
Phil was at, I think at the time he was at Kansas State. It was
Kansas
before.
State, yeah.
And he took me aside and introduced himself. And same thing. He's like, "You come with me. We're going to hit these schools. You come with me." It was a mentorship that you fall into. And it used to be, as a young coach, you would see those guys, yourself, Phil Bennett, whoever else, and be like, I mean, I didn't want to say anything. I just listened to everything he had to say. And so I think it's really important that coaches have mentors. I mean, I know, I was talking about it with some other, another parent of my stepson's team, and it's, the coach is a good coach, and he's a good guy, and but I don't know who he has as a mentor, and I know, even at 40 some years old, when I got that head job at McClintock, like, I'm calling everybody I know and continue to. And I had peers that were my mentors, Max Ragsdale at Campo, Dick Baniszewski at Hamilton, and on and on. And it's super important, I think, for young coaches to get to clinics, build relationships with other coaches, listen, like you said, and then have mentors. And if you're going to have a mentor, listen to what they actually say.
Right.
I mean, you've always been a mentor to me too, coaching. And I remember when I got offered after Arkansas State, I got offered 2 jobs and I turned them both down. And I don't know exactly remember what you said, but you're like, "Corb, you're lucky to get offered 1 job, much less 2 jobs, and you turned them both down." And I did it for reasons that were best for my family,
right?
But yeah. So anything else you want to throw out there before we sign off?
No, I just I just have a great respect for the profession and all the people, and I think if you're a young coach or a veteran coach, wherever you're at, make that your Super Bowl. You treat those kids hard or treat them good. You coach them hard, but you treat them like your son and you treat them well. Good. And it's a great profession, and the people that you come across, generally speaking, are wonderful, good people.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, Coach, and thanks for always being there for both myself and my family, my mom and sister and my dad when he was still around, and love you and Lee and the family, and thank you.
You got it. Yep. I love you guys. You, your mom, your sister, I love all of you, and your dad was special.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Just hang on a sec, Coach, okay?
Yeah.